Hello and welcome to Pick Yourself, the podcast that helps you build and grow your electronic music career. You will learn the strategies, mindset, tactics, and tools that you can implement today to break through tomorrow. My name is Philip. Now let's get right into today's episode. New week, new episode, and this is a very special one for me because it is our 10th episode together. So thanks a lot for everybody who's tuning in. I really respect that. It's so cool that you take the time every week to listen to the show, to have it on your phone, to, follow what I'm putting out here. And honestly, I didn't expect to have so much feedback on the thing. It's really great. We're only 10 episodes in, and I get so many direct messages and emails and comments about the show. And I'm just super stoked. I'm really, really glad you take the time and try to add to this, try to get the most out of it. You can ask me questions. You can just drop me a line directly at philip@kopilko-productions.com, or you just comment under the blog posts of the episode. And that is maybe something that you don't know. So with every episode, I put out a very detailed blog post. You go to pickyourselfpodcast.com, and then you have all the shows, the individual episodes of the show. And there's a detailed blog post for everything. So when you don't have the time to listen to it and you just want to scroll through the thing, maybe when you're on the toilet or whatever, then you can do so by going to pickyourselfpodcast.com and just read the blog article. So that's also fine. And you can leave comments there. I'm super happy to get insights from you, to really know what you're struggling with at the moment, and then I can create more episodes around that topic. And now I will announce something that I usually do at the end of the podcast, but some people just skip the end, which is completely fine with me. But in case you missed it, I put out a very detailed free resource called The 7 Strategies of Highly Successful Electronic Music Artists. And this is available as a PDF, and you just go to pickyourselfpodcast.com/free. Once again, pickyourselfpodcast.com/free. And then you can download the 7 strategies of highly successful electronic music artists. In that PDF, I basically sum up some of the things that will differentiate the most successful clients I have in my mixing and mastering studio from the ones who just barely get by, don't get any gigs and so on. Because there are important differences in the way they approach their career, in the way they build everything, in the way they build up habits and great routines. And some of these nuggets of wisdom are, not really obvious to anybody out there. So I put them together in the PDF. Go there to pickyourselfpodcast.com/free and get it, download it, and let me know what you think of it. Okay, but now let's go into the topic of this week's episode. And I called this episode Why Networking in the Music Industry is a Stupid Tactic and What You Should Do Instead. So I know the title is a bit clickbaity, and I was doing that intentionally because everybody thinks that networking is one of the most important things you can do. And to be honest, I don't really agree with that view. I think that networking in the traditional sense is one of the dumbest wastes of time you can ever do in your music career. I think you can just do something that is way more clever and way more fruitful in order to create a meaningful long-term career, which is the goal of this podcast. So the problem I have with networking in the music business, the traditional way of networking, is this. We all know there's one person, this artist in our local scene, who seems to know everybody and their grandma. That person is the one who shakes hands with all the club promoters, who gets on every guest list and is maxing out his or her friend count on Facebook. And that's a person who we would traditionally assume is great at networking, right? And worst of all, we are usually even a little bit jealous of that person. If we're completely honest to ourselves, we would like to also know as many people. But my take on that is, the number of people you have in your extended network doesn't mean shit. Superficial connections like party friends just don't add any real value to you and your progress. I mean, it's nice to be on every guest list, and it's also nice to be somehow a known figure in your local scene, But the question is, like, what are you actually gaining from that? Except from the guest list spots. I mean, it doesn't hurt to know superficially a lot of people and also to be known. But I believe that you shouldn't focus on that side of networking in the music industry. And there's a second component to the whole traditional networking thing that I really dislike. And that's the idea of you owe me a favor. So the concept is this: you do something for somebody and then you expect the other person to give you something in return. And I know it makes logical sense somehow, but it's a completely wrong mindset when it comes to personal relationships. There's a really famous saying that goes more or less like this: your net worth is in your network. And that basically means the better your network is and the bigger it is, the more you're worth financially or economically. And while there's certainly a lot of truth to that statement on the one hand, I really dislike its perspective. It's super egoistic and just a very economic way of looking at interpersonal relationships. And I see many upcoming electronic music producers have exactly that mindset. So when it comes to networking in the music industry, their thinking only revolves around the question, what do I get out of this? And this mindset will completely prevent you from growing a meaningful network because you're not genuinely interested in the other person. You're too focused on yourself, which creates a barrier between you and the people you want to connect with. And it also leaves a bad taste in your mouth every time you're helping out somebody, but you don't receive anything in return. And that's a downward spiral somehow. So it's really frustrating. And since I agree that it's really important to form meaningful relationships with people in your industry, I will give you the 3 pillars that I tend to use and also recommend to people that I believe are better than the traditional way of networking. So how should you replace the traditional networking in the music business with something that actually helps you? The number 1 strategy that I recommend is to build genuine personal relationships with a selected small group of people that actually make a difference. Okay, so that was probably a lot of information in one sentence. Let's dissect that. Building genuine personal relationships with people. That basically means that those relationships that you have, they grow organically. It's not something forced. It's not something that you just want to happen. Then the second part of it, selected small group of people. That means you shouldn't try to be friends with 500 different people that potentially give you a little bit of a head start in your music career. I think you should focus on a very, very small group, and now we come to the last part of the sentence, that actually make a difference. So you have to train your social skills to really identify who are people that have the same drive as you, that really go for something, that have big visions and not only dream about it, but actually want to implement that and take the steps necessary and do the hard work. Those are the people that you want to look out for, and those are the people that make sense to be connected to you in a meaningful way. So when you're just starting out, this group can be as little as 1 or 2 people. And over the years, more of these relationships naturally develop, but you will never have more than 15 to 20 people maximum in that circle. And these connections are very special because they are based on deep mutual trust, sympathy, positivity, and a true interest in the other person's success. And this is probably the most important aspect of these relationships. True interest in the other person's success. And do you notice I'm putting a lot of effort onto the other person and not onto you? Because you should have that genuine interest in the other person. Okay, so let's give it a little bit of context. What does that mean in reality? Just imagine you have a few of these like really deep connections, professional relationships with people where you really are involved and have a true interest in the other person's success. Imagine that one of these people really blows up professionally. So their career explodes, they skyrocket, they get booked on the biggest festivals. And usually, with a traditional way of networking, we get kind of jealous of the other person. And that's the beauty of my approach here, and also a reason why I decided to make a podcast episode about that. This is so nice when you just can from the bottom of your heart, celebrate the other person's success. Instead of getting jealous, you are super pumped, you support them the best you can, and you just feel great about yourself and also about the other person. And the even better thing is, automatically, if they blow up, they will take you with them if the relationship is actually something mutual and meaningful. So in every aspect of my professional life, I know at least one person that is way more successful in what they do than I am. And I love it. It's absolutely fantastic because I get to learn a lot of great stuff from them. They are pushing me to my limits and beyond that also, which is quite important. And also it's super inspirational. And I really encourage you to listen again to the episodes where I interview Chris Jarman, aka Kamikaze Space Program. It's a 2-part episode, and I think it's episode 4 and 5. And I really encourage you to listen to that again, because in there he's explaining exactly the same thing that I believe is true, which is a lot of his success today is basically based on connections, deep connections and meaningful connections he has made decades before that. So when he was still 20 years younger, the connections that he did then influence what he is doing now, and the labels he releases on, and the people he's touring with, and so on. All of that is something that has to do with those deep, meaningful relationships. So the bottom line of this is, stop the networking bullshit and start building genuine relationships with people who you'd like to see succeed on their path. This is really important. And I'm now going to give you 3 factors which I think characterize these types of relationships. So the first factor is authenticity. I think authenticity is the foundation of all this. These relationships, they develop organically. There's nothing forced about it. It all starts with your genuine interest in the other person. So let's say you've casually met a booking agent from one of your local top 5 agencies. And she's also producing music, and you've checked it out and actually like it a lot. That is already a great foundation because you have a shared interest. So notice that I haven't even talked about, related to her being a booking agent that might potentially be very beneficial for your career. It's just not about that. So you shouldn't build that relationship on a thought in the back of your head that revolves around what you get out of it. That's at the core of authenticity. So there's nothing fake here. You simply develop a professional relationship, and maybe also a personal one. It can even turn into a friendship with someone you actually care about, no matter what she or he has to offer you. And this authenticity greatly influences the way you're behaving in conversations. So whereas in traditional networking in the music industry, it usually ends up being this big and boring ego show where everybody just tries to show off and tell about the latest release and the latest best gig and whatever reactions of the crowd and who else you know and so on. But instead of all that ego bullshit, you can just stay relaxed and simply be yourself and have an open conversation also about struggles because you're truly interested in the other person. So that removes a lot of stress also in social situations. Factor number 2 is always be the go-giver. Now you might ask, what is a go-giver? Well, there is an amazing book by Bob Burg and John David Mann called The Go-Giver. And in this book, the authors are portraying a fictional character who used to be an egocentric go-getter, so someone who is only interested in his own winning, in his own goals, and basically tries to pull the most out of other people and try to give away as little as possible. And that go-getter then transform into a go-giver, which is somebody who is, more interested in giving than in getting first, but then ends up being way more successful and happy thanks to that giving mentality. And in the book, that person was able to achieve that transformation thanks to an older mentor. So a guy who had built exactly these types of relationships that I'm talking about here. And thanks to that, basically had the power to also transform other people and help them on their way. So the idea behind the go-giver mentality is to focus on the other person's success without a single thought about what could be in it for you. So you're giving and you're not asking to get something in return. You're offering your help, your skills, your ideas, your feedback, whatever it is that enables the other person to get to the next level. You are really focusing on helping them in any way possible. Now, you might ask yourself, but what if they start taking advantage of me? And here, that brings us back to the point of authenticity. I mean, you would never want to spend time with someone where you're already expecting that person to trying to pull you over and take advantage of you. And if you truly like this other person and you want him or her to succeed, then you won't even think about them taking advantage of you. I mean, if you notice that they do, well, that's a red flag for the whole relationship anyway. So to sum it up, the value of your professional relationships depends on how much you're willing to give and not on how much you're expecting to get. Let me repeat that. The value of your professional relationships depends on how much you're willing to give and not on how much you're expecting to get. And that concept of the go-giver is much broader, obviously, than just interpersonal relationships. It also means that you as an artist should be willing to give more than you expect to get to your fans, for example, to your followers. You should really think about where can you add value, how much can you help them, how much can you enrich their lives and their day without thinking about how much money are you making out of that. That will follow automatically if you just create something that has true emotional value for them. Now let's get to the third and last factor, which is create long-term mutual value for your relationships. So this is another critical aspect that differentiates this approach from traditional networking in the music industry. So it's not about just a little exchange of favors here and there. It's about helping each other on a much deeper level and, reach big milestones in your professional lives together. And this involves sharing these goals openly with each other. So you just talk about what is your vision and how do you want to achieve that. You talk about that so the other person has a chance to help you when he or she can. Another important aspect here is that you have to invest a lot more time and also other resources into maintaining these relationships compared to traditional networking where you just will hang out here and there, have a beer, shake hands, and say goodbye again. Your connection should reach a deeper level of trust and understanding each year. And it can become this strange mixture of professional relationship and friendship also, which I think is totally okay. I mean, why shouldn't you become friends over time? That's naturally going to happen. And it's absolutely okay. That even deepens the level of trust. So people are sometimes afraid when I talk about this approach. They are afraid of what is going to happen when you have to talk business. So let's say a negotiation for a contract or something like that. I personally see this as a great test of your relationship, because if you're both interested in creating a win for the other person, then you're naturally going to end up in a good place with that negotiation. And you will probably even find more creative solutions than other people that are dealing with each other in a business sense. So to sum this up, a better approach to networking in the music industry is to focus on authentic and meaningful relationships with a selected group of key figures in the electronic music community. And I truly believe that this will be a game changer for you in your career, because with authenticity and the go-giver mentality and the will to create long-term mutual benefits, these are three pillars that create a really solid foundation for all of your professional connections. This is the type of mindset that will definitely differentiate you from a lot of other upcoming artists and producers. And to let that sink in even deeper with you, I'd like you to do a little thought experiment. So you just think back and try to remember all the situations that were kind of breaking points in your career, and just think back to the people involved in that process. Who were the ones that were actually beneficial for you and that actually moved the needle? Was it just the party friends, or was it the kind of people that were more involved with you and what you do and that you also cared more about? And I'm quite sure that for most of you listeners, the second type of people are the more important ones, the ones that you actually care about, the ones that you have formed an organic relationship over time. And now, after all this theory, let's get into action and see how you can implement this. So as always, I'm going to give you 3 action steps that will kick things off. So please bear in mind that all of this takes some time to build and you should never try to force it. It's a really organic thing to grow these types of relationships. So action step number 1, start to be aware of your current mindset in regards to networking in the music industry. And what do I mean by that? Have you been guilty of having lots of party friends in the scene, but little to none real deep relationships with people who actually make a difference for you in your career? And how would it feel to be part of a very selected group of people who would help each other grow? So this whole awareness thing, you see it more and more in my action steps, because I think this is like the first step is always self-awareness to whatever you want to learn and wherever you want to grow. So it feels a bit touchy-feely, but honestly, this is way more important than you probably think it is. Okay, but the second action step is already way more concrete. You write down 2 to 3 people maximum in the electronic music community who you already know, like, and trust, and would love to see succeed in their careers. That's really important here. So preferably, these people are within your local reach, but it's not necessary. You can also choose people that are just online connections, because that can also turn into this type of relationship. And make sure you choose carefully, because you should have a real, authentic and deep interest in their success. So think about what would happen, what would my feelings be if that person really has a career that takes off? Would I start to get jealous, or would I actually be super stoked to see them succeed? Would I love to help them even more? So when you think about these people and their potential success, and you get a little bit of a warm feeling around your belly and you start to smile, and that's a really good sign that you're on the right track and that you're picking the right type of person. So just as a little disclaimer here, it's not enough to only pick people that are nice, that you like personally. It's also important that you pick people that have some potential in whatever they're doing within the electronic music community. So try to find people that are actually driven and that have some vision for what they want to achieve. People that share the same passion for the thing, just like you. And it doesn't have to be artists. It can also be bookers, people who start their own label, journalists, whatever it is, like the type of actual job or profession that they have within the electronic music community. That's also secondary. It should just be very connected to what you do, and it should be a shared passion. Okay, action step number 3. Think about ways to help them reach their goals with the skills and the connections that you have. So you should start to meet with them and start a conversation that slowly drifts into the bigger goals and milestones and visions. And just try to figure out and ask what is that they want to achieve. And you ask follow-up questions to just dig a little bit deeper. Show that you're genuinely interested in their path and what they're doing. And you figure out smart ways of helping them with the skills and the connections that you have. So to begin with, it doesn't have to be a really big move. It can be like a little favor here and there that you do, a little connection that you make, a little introduction that you make to somebody else. These are the kinds of things that get things going. And that means you start being the go-giver and you adopt that mentality and you do what you can to get them to the next level. You don't ask for anything in return. And you also wait. It doesn't really matter when it comes back. Something will happen for sure. You don't even have to think about that. Okay, so we are officially at the end of the 10th episode of this podcast. And it was an absolute pleasure doing this for you every week. I just want to say thank you again. It's really great to have you as a listener. And I would love to hear from you. So please leave a comment on the blog posts, drop me an email, whatever it is that you want to do. Give me some interaction. I'm curious to hear what helps you, what doesn't, what would you like to hear from the podcast. And well, just get to know you, basically. That's also quite cool. So I have met some very interesting people thanks to this podcast. And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing it. So I look forward to hearing from you, and we will see each other or hear each other next week again on Tuesday. Bye-bye. If you have enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. And you can find show notes to this episode in form of a detailed blog post at pickyourselfpodcast.com. Until then, see you next time.